Welcome to Grow Your Wealth, the podcast where scaling a successful brand and your wellness go hand in hand. I'm Rena Goodwin, founder and CEO of Factor PR, a top beauty, health, and wellness PR studio, and I'm here to help you work smarter, not harder. Each week, we'll talk branding, marketing, and business growth alongside real, practical insights from trailblazers who are building businesses without the burnout. If you're ready to grow your brand, protect your energy, and design a life you love, you are in the right place. Let's grow. Hey guys, welcome back to Grow Your Wealth. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Kait Turshen, who is the founder of SLFMKR and Well Stocked, to talk about what it really takes to build a successful brick-and-mortar business in today's big box digital world. Kait is sharing how she opened up her retail store during the absolute uncertainty of the global pandemic, when most businesses were pulling back, and how she approached everything from negotiating to curating brands and creating an in-store experience people actually want to come back to time and time again. We also talk about the strategy behind building a physical retail brand in a digital-first world, why community and education have been key to her growth, and how she's expanded beyond beauty into new categories like kitchen and home with her latest concept, Well Stocked. And of course, we also touch on clean beauty, what it really means, how to cut through the noise of greenwashing, and why Kait built SLFMKR around a clear, values-driven standard. But this conversation goes far beyond products. It's about vision, it's about risk-taking, and building something tangible in a time when so much feels so virtual. If you've ever dreamed about opening a storefront, launching a product-based business, or creating a brand experience that people connect with, not just online, but offline as well, I think this episode's gonna really leave you feeling inspired and thinking bigger than ever. Let's tune in, and here's Kait. Kait Turshen, welcome to Grow Your Wealth. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm great. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I know that you are someone that I have known personally, but also been following, particularly after you and your spouse, Ben, who's been on the Grow Your Wealth podcast previously, moved back to the wonderful world of Cleveland, Ohio. But I know your story, which is so fascinating, we're going to get into here in a second, started even before then. Kait, could you take us back to your start kind of in the beauty and fashion world before returning to Ohio? Would love to kind of give people the lay of the land about who you are starting there before we kind of dive into your retail venture with SLFMKR.
Sure, absolutely. So my career in the fashion and beauty industry kind of actually started in college, not because I was necessarily studying those things, but because I was a political science major at a small liberal arts college in Ohio and thought I was going to law school. And I interned at a law firm for 2 summers in Columbus, Ohio, while I was in school. And I realized it was not the industry for me. And logically, in my very young brain at the time, I'm like, well, the logical answer is if I'm not going to law school, I'm going into the fashion and beauty industry in New York City. I had always loved New York City. We had family that live in the area. So I grew up going there, and it always just felt like home to me. Every time I stepped foot in the city, I'm like, this is where I belong. And so after I graduated from college with a political science degree, I moved to New York 3 days after graduation into a 6-story walk-up on the Upper East Side and enrolled in a post-grad program at one of the fashion schools in New York. And then that was a year-long program. And during that time, I had multiple internships. I worked my first retail job at Bloomingdale's 59th Street during the holidays. And that's what really launched my career into fashion and beauty. My first job out of school, out of that graduate program, was for a beauty company called Malin and Getz. And at that time in 2006, they were really one of the first brands starting to explore clean beauty. And they weren't necessarily doing everything that all the brands are doing now in terms of clean beauty, but they were really, in my opinion, one of the first brands that, was formulating without parabens and phthalates and ingredients like that. Their founder had come from Kiehl's and had extremely sensitive skin and just couldn't even use the products at Kiehl's a lot of times for his sensitivities. So he was like, I'm going to create a wonderful line that I can use on my very sensitive skin. So that was really my first taste in the industry. From there, after that job, I moved more into the ready-to-wear world, and I worked at Tommy Hilfiger. I worked at BCBG Max Azria, Alice Olivia, and my last job in New York was for Free People.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So you kind of diving into beauty, switching over to fashion, which are two very, very different worlds. But it sounds like kind of the beauty industry has had a special place in your heart. What decided ultimately for you to kind of make this shift back into this world? Because it sounds like you were killing it, right? Like you were doing amazing in the fashion world. What sort of drew you back into the beauty world?
What drew me back is when we moved back to Northeast Ohio here in Cleveland, and I realized there was a big void in the market. Coinciding with this move back to Ohio was, my husband and I taking a really hard look at how we were living from kind of that clean standpoint. And at this time, I had already started looking at all the products we were using in our household, on our bodies, how we were eating. That journey was something that happened over many, many years, starting in New York and spanning, into current day. But when we moved back here, I found that a lot of the products I loved weren't available in person anywhere here in Cleveland. So I was ordering so many products online, or at the time we were going back and forth to New York very frequently. It's like I'd go and I'd hit all my spots and I'm like, this is so inefficient. I'm either ordering online or I have to wait until I go 400 miles away to stock up on the products that I want. And I was like, I can't be the only one looking for clean products in Cleveland, Ohio. So I really felt like there was a void in the market. And that is what led me to develop the concept of Self-Maker.
Oh my goodness. I remember it like it was just yesterday, but how long has it been now since you officially opened Self-Maker, which again is your independent, clean beauty, clean personal care storefront, right?
Yeah. So the concept really started in the fall of 2019. And then it initially opened as just a little footprint in my husband's meditation studio in Ohio City in Cleveland. And that was kind of just a thing where I was like, oh, well, you have a meditation studio. My background is retail. At the time, I was working remotely for an activewear brand based in New York, but I was like, let me just throw together some retail for you. And that's kind of when I was like, well, I like these products and I like these. And I started developing those wholesale relationships. And then I realized when we would be there kind of co-working throughout the day, even if he wasn't teaching meditation, people were trying to come and shop. And I was like, oh, wait, this could be something. And so it did start at the end of 2019. And then at the beginning of 2020, we would have wellness focused events there. But as you recall, just a few months into 2020, the studio had only been open a few months. We had a few events. I had a little bit of retail and global pandemic hits. So Ben, my husband, closed his studio temporarily at the time because no one was doing anything in person. The world was shut down. And I took, the retail that I had, I took it online and, people would place orders online and I would deliver it to their doorstep, or I'd arrange a time where they could like very quickly come into the studio and we would be masked and do a little handoff of whatever they had ordered. And also during that time, we were at home with our daughter who was around 4 years old and we were filling the day. Like she wasn't in school. We were, playing Barbies and taking bike rides. And one of the places we would bike with her in my little bike trailer was the Van Aken district. And at this time, there were no stores open at Van Aken because everyone was closed for the pandemic. But I kept seeing a vacant storefront. And I, thought to myself, I'm like, could Selfmaker be here? By this time, Ben had decided to permanently close his meditation studio because there was so much unknown. He was returning to law full time. So the physical little footprint that I had in Ohio City was going away. And I said, I think maybe I belong here at Van Aken. It was a favorite place to visit of our families anyway. And one day when I had biked there with Remy in tow, we ran into one of the owners of the district, and I thought that it was a sign. And I called him the next day and I said, I know everyone is closing businesses right now, but I would like to open one. So I pitched my concept and, he liked my concept, and I personally knew him. And I think, he was willing to take a chance on, a new concept opening at a really tumultuous time. And so that physical brick and mortar store opened in July of 2020. So coming up on 6 years.
Wow. Okay. We need to pause and we need to talk. Okay. Because this was your first entrepreneurial venture. And like, to be an entrepreneur, you do have to accept there's going to be some level of risk and welcome it in some way, right? There's no risk without reward. That being said, you opened a brick and mortar business that had not existed previously in a market that you only kind of tested the concept, right? With this smaller storefront on the other side of town and, these drop-offs, not really in terms of foot traffic and so forth.
Yeah.
And you decided, I'm going to go for it. Pandemic be damned. I'm going to open up a storefront. During the height of this pandemic, what was going through your mind? I just have to know because, again, risk is somewhat necessary. I think to the average person that would have felt exceptionally risky. Why was that the right time?
I felt like it was a great time only because how much could I lose? I mean, yes, there was money to be lost, but I was like, well, if, people aren't going to buy into this now, they're not going to buy into it in 3 years. I'm very much like a person of action. So kind of when I set my mind to something, I'm like, no, I'm doing it now. And I actually did have a business previously in New York. I took a brief break from the fashion and beauty industry and I had a food-based business. So I had already dabbled in entrepreneurship a bit. And I think it's just honestly something in my blood. Like I'm always like, how can I make this a business? Or like, wow, this business would be, incredible if it did this. Or my mindset is just always in that entrepreneurial thing. And I always had these very corporate jobs where I was able to kind of apply that line of thinking. But now in real life, and it definitely was a risk. But like to me, it was a financial risk. And I actually didn't invest that much money up front. I was pretty scrappy about everything. I bought really lean inventory. I was able to negotiate a good deal in terms of rent and lease and all of that, given the time. And, it ended up being a good time from that perspective in terms of negotiation from a leasing standpoint, but also in developing wholesale relationships with the brands that I carried because during this time, so many other brick and mortar stores had closed. So I think a lot of brands took a big revenue hit from that. And so they were like, oh, well, here's a new store that's opening. I can make up a little of my lost revenue with them. And so I was able to get some really solid brands out of the gate. I also spent a career on the wholesale side of the industry. So I also knew types of things those brands would want to hear and want to know. I was prepared going into conversations with brands of how I could, how and why they would want a vendor like me. So that I think worked to my advantage. All of my experience from fashion and beauty did help play a role. But yeah, a really good time to negotiate things.
Ooh, that's a really great point, right? So you were willing to take the risk, but there was just a little less just in terms of financial risk, bandwidth risk, in terms of stocking up on some of that inventory.
Yeah.
One of the things, and I encourage everyone to check out selfmaker.com, we'll put the link in the show notes, is that everything about it is so curated and intentional. Like, it's not only apparent that you know what you're doing from a sales and marketing standpoint, but also just from a business standpoint. First impressions are so important. And, what has often come up for me when I had thought about Selfmaker, when I've shopped at Selfmaker, is that for a place like Cleveland, it did feel a little ahead of its time, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these brands that you carry, like Berlin Skin or even Malin and Getz and Herbivore and so forth, like they're pretty well known now. But even 6 years ago, particularly while people were sort of opening their eyes a little bit more to cleaner beauty, skincare, personal care products, because we were all examining our health habits during the
Yeah.
pandemic. But you were really like educating people in some ways, I'm sure, and introducing them to these brands for the same time. Do you find that you're still having to do that? Is education, is it really important in a market that maybe, if you are opening a brick and mortar business, particularly one that is product based, that you've got to almost get the market to catch up to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would get a lot of people that walked in when we first opened. They would be like, is this a franchise? Which was honestly the highest compliment to me, that they thought like one of these already existed in a bigger city. And I'm like, no, 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 this is the only one. Um, they were, and so many people during the pandemic transplanted to Cleveland, to either, kind of like move back, get out of cities, move back home with family. So I had a ton of customers that were coming from LA and New York, and they were all, so complimentary. Like, wow, I can't believe a store like this is in Cleveland with these brands. And like, we have this in LA and we have that in New York. So it was a really fun curation project. Like, that is my favorite part of the job. And then with that, kind of outside of the, I want to say educated from a clean perspective of, these bigger city clients, clean beauty in general in Cleveland was very new at the time. There weren't really any other clean beauty retailers. And so, yes, it was very education forward. And I am the daughter of two teachers. So education has always been in my blood. It was never something I wanted to pursue as a profession in a school, but I totally recognize the value of education. And I thought it was really important to lead with education. Anytime I'm training an employee, in staff meetings, I always emphasize, we are three things at Selfmaker. We're sales, of course, because we're a retail store, but we are also educators and we're service providers. So those are kind of my three pillars for all of my salespeople. And education is just as important as the sale and as the service we're providing someone. And again, as to your point, so many people were really taking a hard look at their health during the pandemic and like, oh, wow, I really have to up my health game so I don't get COVID and potentially die or suffer really long-term consequences. So when I first opened, we had a lot of ingestibles and wellness forward supplements, things like that. And I really wanted to provide some level of health and self-care from like head to toe, inside and out. So it was like, yes, we had skincare, makeup, body care, but we also had things to support sleep. We had things to even support, oral care, things like clean toothpaste, tongue scrapers, things like that. So it was really important that someone could walk in the door and kind of check off every part of their body almost, whether it was a deodorant or a moisturizer. Yeah.
I gotta say, the tongue scraper, totally underrated.
I know,
I got
right?
I got one a couple of years ago. I'm like, why has no dentist ever told me about this?
Never.
Like,
I know.
game
Yeah.
changer. That also leads me to another question, Kate. Let's level set. What does clean mean? Because I
Yeah.
know that you know this very, very well. There is like so much misconception and greenwashing that also
Yep.
happens. Your standards are also very, very high, which I think folds into the elevated experience that you give to your customers as well. Can you define that, especially in self-maker terms, which are like
Yeah.
some of the highest beauty standards that I've seen? What is
Yeah.
clean beauty?
Yeah. So again, as you mentioned, there's so much greenwashing, which is just basically companies using certain terminology to make a consumer feel like they're getting a clean, safe product. So it all kind of comes down to like words that are used. But at Selfmaker, for us, we have three main standards, and that's, non-toxic ingredients. So products that are harmful or potentially harmful are on the no list and not in any of the formulations we carry. All of our brands have to have some sort of eco component, whether it's recyclable packaging, or we have a brand that uses renewable energy to manufacture their products. Many of our brands are B Corp certified and have other eco standards and certifications. And then lastly, cruelty free. So that is our definition of clean. And then kind of within that, under the non-toxic pillar, we have a list of ingredients that, we say no to. And yeah, I think it's hard because it's not something regulated in the United States, whereas in Europe or in Canada, they have 10,000 ingredients that are banned from products and food in those countries and continents. And here we don't have that. Our lists are very short, whether it's food or beauty. And so yeah, for me it was really important to be able to curate in a way that people didn't have to do all this double checking and be overwhelmed by all of that, because I think kind of one of the biggest prohibitors of people living a cleaner lifestyle is like kind of that lack of knowledge and where to start. And there's a lot of confusion. So I was like, you can walk into our doors and know that like everything has been thoroughly vetted and is clean. And, my standard of clean is going to be different than another retailer's or another person's, but I think our standards are pretty high as well.
Absolutely. So walk me through it. I am someone like me, someone like you, a busy entrepreneur, a busy mother. I am clean curious and I walk into Selfmaker and I am looking for a few products that can really move the needle when it comes to shifting from traditional personal care that may not be the best for my body into something that's a lot better, that makes an impact, that helps me get ready and feel my best for the day. Do you have like 3 to 5 products or brands that you're like, this is the holy grail in every mom, professional, entrepreneur's beauty box, so to speak? Could you tell us about those?
That's a tough one, only because I feel like everyone comes in kind of in a different place. So if you walked
Mhm.
in and you were like, I'm clean curious, what do I need? I'm going to start our conversation by asking you a lot of questions like, well, what are you
Mhm.
currently using? What do you feel like you have time for? Things like that. I really find that skincare and self-care is very bio individual and everyone's at a different place. So again, my approach is with education and kind of meeting someone where they are. So like what's
Mm.
great for me might not be great for you. I would say in terms of like must switch to products, skincare is what our biggest bread and butter is all day, every day. But if someone walked in and they're like, I want to live a cleaner lifestyle, I'd be like, let's get you off of aluminum deodorant. Let's get you a
Mhm.
cleaner toothpaste. These things that are going on very absorbent areas of your body. And, lip products that like are maybe ending up in your mouth. I would say, let's get those switched. So kind of, I think that might surprise people that I'm not like, let's switch your facial cleanser right away. I mean, that's something that's on your skin for 30 to 60 seconds and being rinsed off. I want to tackle kind of, what's going on around your lymph nodes, what you're putting in your mouth, what you're putting around your mouth from a cleaner perspective. From a skincare perspective, if you're, a busy mom, again, I'm going to be like, what do you feel like you have time for? In skincare are 4 baseline steps that we really want everyone to do morning and night is cleanser, toner, serum, moisturizer. And I have people come in who want to do 10 steps, or I have people who come in and are like, I'm barely washing my face. And so it's like, again, I'm meeting people where they are and I'll be like, okay, let's get you cleansing your face, but also let's add a moisturizer in. Then you're getting those 2 bookend steps. And then I like to build with people. And I find that if we overwhelm people with products or too much information, they're going to leave feeling overwhelmed and confused. So to me, I'd rather someone walk in my door and we sell them 1 or 2 products that they feel really great about, they feel confident in using, they go home, they do it, they love it, and then they come back and they slowly build. So that's how we work with a lot of people.
That's awesome. And so in addition to some of those like standards that you're looking for, Kait, people do shop with their eyes, so to speak. So as you are thinking about curating your store, or this is for anyone that has a product-based business, when we think about shelf impressions and shelf space and things of that nature, what do you also kind of look for?
Yeah, the aesthetic is everything. So if you walk into Selfmaker, all of the brands are beautiful and have really great packaging, really great logos, color palettes, all of that. So once a brand passes kind of our 3 pillars of being non-toxic, eco-friendly, cruelty-free, then I'm looking at things like the aesthetics, the visuals. How is this going to look on a shelf? How is it going to look next to its adjacencies? How are we going to merchandise it? We had a really great makeup line. I personally loved all the products, but it was very, very hard to merchandise and easily missed. So it didn't do well. So all of those things have to be considered, in addition to many other things as well. But it is hugely important. And I get sent a lot of products and a lot of line sheets to review all the time from account reps. And, a lot of them will say like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, the product sounds great, but like the branding is not right for our store. This looks like it belongs more so in Whole Foods or in a Target. And, it is important that our customers are not only coming in and feeling supported, getting service, and getting education. We want them to feel like they're having an elevated experience and getting something really special and not something they're finding on the shelves of like a national mass market retailer.
Hi, friends. I want to tell you about our new and improved authority accelerator from Factor PR called RealFluence. RealFluence is the only membership that helps beauty and wellness founders grow their reputation and authority to attract new customers without endless discounting, advertising, or going viral. Inside, you'll learn how to get recognized for your product or your expertise, partner with other founders, and become the name people trust and talk about, all with the guidance and community to support you every step of the way. Remember, you can't buy authority. You have to earn it. And RealFluence is here to help. Visit therealfluence.com to get started. Oh, yeah. And speaking of which, too, I mean, like, the experience inside a place like Selfmaker versus, say, a Sephora is completely different, right? Like Sephora, it's like there's almost this overstimulation. You can't really go deep with any certain types of brands. Their sort of approach is certainly to go a lot wider. And even though they are trying to, or had tried to bring in kind of more of these clean beauty brands, it really got lost in the sauce, right, at these storefronts. So I feel like what you have really established has been something really special that not only, you experience firsthand in the store. But if you can't get to Cleveland, Ohio and visit SLFMKR, you've done such a nice job, Kait, of like helping bring that in-person experience to the internet
Oh, thanks.
also. What's been your strategy around that? Because that is not easy.
No, yeah, that's a whole other layer. I'm very lucky to have really incredible teammates that work alongside me. For example, with my two hands in our digital content, we had a content meeting yesterday. So, during a meeting like that, we're kind of looking at the current month we're in and the month ahead and really what are the marketing themes. We of course want to hit things like Mother's Day, but also, what stories are we telling as we're switching seasons? Like it's time for like post spring break body care as we're all like recovering from a week in the sun. We're thinking about like more SPF and how are we storytelling around the importance of SPF as we're going into summer. So yes, it takes a village. So yeah, we are very consistent about our email marketing. We target for both of my stores, SLFMKR and Well Stocked, to send at least 3 marketing emails a week. And social media kind of follows that same cadence as well.
Nice. That's amazing. One quick question, because I do want to talk about your new retail concept for a little bit as well. The beauty world, particularly in the editorial world, it's like a pendulum. It just kind of swings. And what we've kind of observed, at least in the media world, is the pendulum swinging kind of more towards clinical versus clean. Do you find that are you seeing that with people as well? Like, are they pretty loyal once you get them to kind of convert to clean? Because I know brand loyalty is so important. And what you have really created, which is really special, is like you didn't go out and make a brand. You created a community and a hub for a movement, really like a cultural movement versus like, I'm just going to go out and create my own brand. And it sounds like it's been a strong movement, but I've just been kind of curious. Have you seen consumer behavior change at all?
No, we really haven't. Our community is very dedicated to the path of clean beauty. And it doesn't, clean and clinical can actually coincide for sure. And we definitely have people that will go to med spas, will do the injectable route, but get our skincare from us. We have many clients who have a mix of products from SLFMKR and perhaps their dermatologist or a med spa. So they can definitely coexist. Again, it's so bio-individual. And, we'll get some people that come in and they're like, well, I really love this product that I get at this med spa, but like, I want to get everything else from you. And that's great. We welcome that. And again, we're just meeting everyone where they are. But what I have found is, because we are so education forward and we're more service forward and we're also self-care forward. Like you're just getting a different experience at SLFMKR. You're getting a different type of facial if you come in for a service with us. People want to continue that experience at home as well. And so I think, we're very lucky to have that kind of loyalty. And I personally don't really feel like our clients are really looking for anything super clinical right now by any means. Yeah. In fact, like we have more so recently brought in a lot more kind of natural brands that are very focused on the experience and purely botanical ingredients, brands like Vintner's Daughter, May Lindstrom, Monastery, and these are all very elevated, botanical forward, highly effective brands that are really a luxury experience as well. And people are loving that right now. It's almost the opposite of clinical.
That's amazing. And I am so glad that you did bring up like the service-based experience that you provide to your clients as well, because I'm sure it's a great way to also marry product with experience with something that is very effective for your clients too, which also kind of helps differentiate it from other kind of retail brands out there. Like you're more than just a product vending service, right? Like you're also
Yeah.
giving these other important professional services, and really helps underline your commitment to education because you got your esthetician license, right? Since opening the storefront too, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Again, like I'm such a child of educators. I'm always taking a class on something, and I actually was going to get my esthetician license before the pandemic, and I was going to start in March of 2020, and then I had already kind of, the self-maker concept had already started and was in a small way in Ben's meditation studio. And then, yeah, the pandemic hit. And so I put it off and ended up opening, full physical retail self-maker. And then once I got that fully staffed and kind of running fluidly, that's when I was able to go get my license. And yeah, having that service component has definitely been such an incredible addition to the business because, they're coming in, they're getting a service that is not only incredible for their skin, but it is a real dose of self-care. And people leave wanting to continue that at home. So it's been a really great way to also build our community and our experience.
Well, I can tell everything that you're doing is working because you are literally beaming. If you guys are not watching this on video, I urge you to head to YouTube and please look at Kait's stunning glowing skin. That being said, Kait, you've opened another business recently, and it's not another self-maker.
No,
You've opened another business, Well Stocked. I'd love to know kind of the behind the scenes, why you decided to open a completely new concept versus opening up another self-maker. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm happy to. So yes, Well Stocked opened in October of 2025. And again, it was because of a void I saw in the Cleveland market. For a while at Selfmaker, I've always been like head to toe, inside and out. But with skincare and self-care, the focus is often, the bathroom, the bedroom, all of those products that you're using there. There's so much to clean up in a kitchen from a clean living perspective. And it's like in Cleveland, we have Sur La Table, we have Williams and Sonoma, we have Crate and Barrel. But again, those are big national retailers. And while I've never had a bad experience at any of those, it just doesn't have that kind of bespoke curation, elevated experience. And I was like, there is a local kitchen store missing from Cleveland. And, the other sidebar is in New York City, around 2012, 2013, I actually left the fashion and beauty industry for a few years and had a food business, which had stemmed from some of my health stuff going on. And during that time, I had started a food blog that was for allergen-free, gluten-free, and vegan baking. And then from that, I created a gluten-free, allergen-free, vegan flour blend at a completely allergen-free facility in the middle of Iowa. And so I was selling that online. I was selling it wholesale to other retailers. I was teaching gluten-free baking classes in the city. And when I came home to Worcester, Ohio, and where I taught in Worcester, Ohio, was this really charming little local kitchen store. And so that always stuck with me, that when I moved to Cleveland and there's all this great local retail, there just wasn't this kitchen store where you could go and, get measuring cups or flour or a rolling pin with that kind of local experience, but elevated. And so, I was like, I think we need to take the ethos of Selfmaker and take it out of the bathroom into the kitchen. And that's how Well Stocked was born. So it's kind of fusing all my past lives.
I love that. I love that version. That's amazing. I am very excited to check it out. So balancing two businesses, I should say, balancing family. Kait, how do you reinvest back into yourself? I mean, it doesn't sound like you've put too much friction between you and self-care, obviously, but in addition to all these fantastic products that you're curating and using in your everyday life,
Yes.
Any other things that you do, like activity wise?
Yeah, I definitely practice what I preach for sure. And yes, I'm juggling a lot, but honestly, we all are, and we're all, we all have to do it in different ways. So, from that standpoint, I'm just a very efficient, organized person. So I can have time to do things like self-care, spend time with my family, but some things I love to do. I love cooking. I love cooking for my family. I cook maybe in a very different way than a lot of people. Like we are very, very clean eaters here. But I'm, any chance I get, like I'm in my kitchen making meals and snacks for my family. For myself, I mean, that is honestly self-care for myself as well. I do think what you do in the kitchen is definitely self-care. But yeah, I get facials every few weeks at SelfMaker. I have one tomorrow that I can't wait for. I work out with a trainer twice a week. I love walking my dogs with my kids. That's like great family time. We're outdoors, no technology, just nature, each other. And I think community is such a huge part of self-care too that maybe doesn't get a lot of credit. So yeah, fostering friendships. I love, like I said, I love to always be in a class. I think art and creativity are huge forms of self-care as well. So for example, this winter I took a watercolor class once a week. Tonight I'm attending a calligraphy workshop. So I make sure, even if it's an hour or two, that like I'm doing something for myself every week. And I also prioritize sleep. That's always kind of been a big struggle of mine from a health and wellness perspective. So prioritizing that. But yeah, those are some of my favorite things to do.
I love that. I love that. That's really like deep care from the inside out. And you're certainly a walking inspiration.
Thank you.
Kait, before I let you go, what's next? I'm sure you're not even thinking about that. You're like, I just opened a business. But again, knowing a little bit about you, you're probably always thinking one step ahead.
Yes. There are definitely some wheels turning. And my mom was like, I don't understand how your brain works the other day. So it's hard because sometimes I can't help myself. Like again, I'm like, this could go here. This would be a great concept here. I think, yeah, I've always on my kind of professional, I don't want to say bucket list, but I've always wanted to explore a store in another city. So that's something that my wheels are always turning on too. But yeah.
There's no self-maker in Cincinnati where I am. Just you let me know.
You never know.
You never know. Not too far. Awesome. Kait, where can people find you and connect with you online?
Yes. So for SelfMaker, our website is SLFMKR.com, and that is also the Instagram handle. For Well Stocked, it is wellstockedshop.com, also our Instagram handle. My personal Instagram is SelfMakerKait, so you can give me a follow there and you'll see all the self-care and all the things that I cook. So
I love it. So definitely give Kait a follow. We'll have those links in the show notes too. Kait, it was such a pleasure to connect with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to hang out with you.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.